Shepard was asking for it for three.
Well, he felt it, didn't he? He was begging.
Oh, what a play by Matt Mitchell.
To Watson, sees a lane, takes it underneath. Montana three.
This is a clinic. This is Aztec basketball.
Aztec Nation, what is up? This is the Aztec Breakdown Podcast. My name is Tron, and I'm very happy to be back in the booth, metaphorically, and in this case, literally, to be doing another show. It's been a few weeks since I've been able to do one, but I'm very happy to be in here, and I say metaphorically and literally because a few shows ago I mentioned that I now have access to a legit podcast studio, and that's where I'm at right now. So hopefully you can already tell the difference in just like the sound quality in general. Also, on top of that, we can do cool things like where is it? This. I think that's fantastic. I don't know how much I'm going to use it, but I love having the ability to use it, so that's very exciting. So let me know what you think about the new sound quality, and if it's not good, I'm sure there's ways to change it, but as far as I can tell from where I'm recording right now, it's pretty good. Quick update, maybe more than one update, I think just one quick personal update. So recently, I'm sure a number of you have noticed, I left Twitter. It was a number of reasons. The biggest one was probably just I felt like it wasn't good for my mental health being on there, and even that is for a number of different reasons. It's not just one thing that I can point to that made it that way. But I have left Twitter. I am still in a few other places. Blue Sky has replaced my primary account, and Blue Sky stopped doing the thing where like somebody had to refer you to join the group, basically. So anybody can sign up now is my understanding, and so if you would like to still see me posting stuff, you can go there. I'm still doing videos and things of that nature over there. I've heard a number of people mention things along the lines of like it's like Twitter back in 2012. I wasn't on Twitter in 2012. Can't confirm or deny. I don't even know if that's good or not, but that's what people are saying. So that's where I'm at if you want to keep seeing me say whatever stuff that I say. With that, I think let's just get into the show. Let's start off with a recap of the Gonzaga game. I do know, I will say before I even get started too much, I know Kyle has been wanting to do a show recapping Gonzaga and previewing some of these other games, so it's very possible that you might get two shows that are pretty similar just from different hosts. Hopefully that's a good thing. Maybe not, I don't know. But hopefully it's a good thing. Let's just jump into it though. The Gonzaga game. Obviously, it was not the end result that we wanted. Obviously, it wasn't the outcome that we wanted. That being said, I think overall, I found myself leaving that game feeling much more confident in the team after the game than I was going into the game, which is a weird thing to say after a loss. But I think, the UCSD game, they won, obviously, but it just felt closer than maybe it should have been. The team, didn't have a lot of rhythm and flow, and there were all sorts of things that were happening there. And so there were some concerns after the UCSD game. And the Occidental game, even though that was a big blowout, didn't really do anything to mitigate those concerns at all. There are still concerns, obviously. That being said, I do feel better about the team, and it's still very early in the season. We still have all the regular small sample size warnings. But I think looking at all the factors of, number one, Gonzaga might be the best team in the nation. I think it's darn near impossible to put them outside the top 5. And the Aztecs, while they never really were able to, they started off strong. It was 12-12 at one point after that ridiculous spin by Wayne McKinney. After that point, they were never really able to get it within 5 or 6, but they also never went away to the Aztecs, right? It wasn't a blowout on Gonzaga's end, and there were multiple times where the Aztecs got it down to 9, got it down to 8. Gonzaga just had an answer every single time, and that's what good teams are going to do. So that's fine, but I love that the Aztecs never went away, and I love that they kept it relatively close. It was eventually, a double-digit loss, but they kept it relatively close. So those were both very encouraging in general, and then when you add in all the context of Reese Waters, who was potentially the team's best player, if not at the very least like the team's best scorer, arguably, when he's healthy, he was out, right? Would he have been able to get an extra 3 to 6 points? Very possibly, arguably even very likely. And that helps things, right? Miles Byrd hadn't practiced all week and was noticeably hurt. He was able to do things, absolutely, but you could tell that not only was he rusty, but like maybe still not quite 100% yet. So that was a thing. Byrd finished with 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. He also had 3 turnovers, which wasn't great, but the rest of it was solid. 5 boards and 3 assists from Byrd. You take that. He went 0 of 5 from the floor. If he's healthy, does he go 0 of 5? Probably not. He's probably able to make at least one of those, right? And that changes things. So those 2 factors were huge. Farrell Compton cramping in the game. Hopefully that's something that gets figured out as the season goes on. All these numbers of just little things there. And despite all these things holding the Aztecs back, they still held Gonzaga to their lowest total points of the season. Gonzaga, they held Gonzaga to 80, which from a general point of view is bad. However, that's the lowest Gonzaga has scored, even to this day. I'm recording on Friday, November 22nd. It's 12:30 p.m. Gonzaga just played last night, and they still scored more than 80 points. So it's the lowest points Gonzaga's ever scored, which I think reflects well on the defense, and once again is encouraging because Byrd was hobbled. He's one of the better defenders. Reese Waters isn't known for his defense, but would have given size and experience and things of that nature. And he was out, right? So there are positive signs. And granted, we could flip that the other way and say, well, Gonzaga could have done this thing and that thing, and it could have been a blowout in that way. And absolutely, that's the case too. But I am encouraged by the team's performance against Gonzaga, against the Bulldogs. Shouting out a couple players here. Nick Boyd was more or less the type of player that I had hoped he would be coming to the Aztecs. So let's give him a round of applause. Nick Boyd had 23 points, 9 rebounds, only 1 assist, and I think 2 turnovers. So that part wasn't fantastic, but he was scoring the ball. Oftentimes, it seemed almost at will. He got to the charity stripe 10 times and made 9 of them, which is fantastic. He seemed to be the only player who could drive the ball into the lane effectively and consistently, which was important because Gonzaga has that hedging defense that they used where the big man steps out and tries to specifically prevent the ball handler from driving into the lane. And Nick Boyd, in the first half it was a bit of a struggle, but in the second half he just started rejecting every single ball screen, which is probably the simplest way to beat one of those hedges. He would just reject the ball screen. So I'm going to try and explain this over audio, and it probably won't go over well, but we're going to do it anyway. So if the screener's to the ball handler's right, if you're dribbling the ball and the screen comes and gets set to your right, what Gonzaga's defense is going to do is their big man is going to come out even further to the right and make it so that you can't turn the corner around that screen and get into the paint. And they're going to stay with you until your primary defender can get back and recover to you, right? Because of that, if the screen is on your right and you dribble left, there is no big man over there. There's no defender over there unless they rotate over, right? And that's what Nick Boyd started to do in the second half. He did it once or twice in the first half as well, and oddly enough, it was early on he did that, and then he stopped doing that, and I don't know why. If you look at the very first play, he did that, and it resulted in a wide open B.J. Davis 3-point shot from the corner, wide open, not a defender within 10 or 12 feet of B.J. Davis over there. And I don't know why they stopped doing that. That's probably my one main criticism of the game, was just kind of the play calling and to a still significant but lesser extent the decision making in those scenarios, because that's what Gonzaga does, is they hedge the ball screens, and it seemed like it took the Aztecs too long to adjust to that. But regardless, props to Nick Boyd. He was on fire. Like I said, 23 points and 9 rebounds, which you don't expect from your 6'2", 6'3" guard. But that was the type of thing that I was expecting from him coming in. And so when we combine, if we look at Nick Boyd having 23 points against Gonzaga, Miles Byrd having 20 against UC San Diego, B.J. Davis having, 27 or 28 or whatever it was against UCLA in the closed-door scrimmage. That's a scrimmage, so it's different, but these are encouraging signs, and it's, the Aztecs might not have one key guy. They might not have a Jaden Ledee or a Matt Bradley or a Malachi Flynn type guy that's going to score at will every single game, but they have a number of guys who can do it. And I think that's encouraging. And as time goes on, we may see more, and we may see more consistency. There's all the injury issues of the offseason that happened as well, that I didn't even mention when I was getting into why the Gonzaga game was encouraging, but those are things to keep in mind. Speaking of B.J. Davis, he also had a fantastic game, and I think early in the season he's shown that he is a scorer and he is a shot maker. He had 15 points, he only took 9 shots, and he wasn't buoyed very much by free throws. I think he only made 1 or 2 free throws, and despite that, he was able to score 15 points on 9 shots because he's scoring just highly efficiently, and especially behind the arc, he is scoring highly efficiently, which was his rap out of high school, right? He had multiple 50, 40, 90 seasons, 50% from the field, 40% from 3, 90% from the free throw line. So he's a highly efficient scorer, and that has, early on in the season, that has maintained to be the case. So that's super exciting. He's also shown his quickness. He wasn't able to get into the lane nearly as effectively against Gonzaga, but against other teams, especially ones that don't hedge as much, you can see him potentially being more effective. And his quickness on defense, being able to jump into passing lanes. He had a steal against Gonzaga. These are all things that are very encouraging for the young guard. And so shout outs to him as well. I think one of the bigger takeaways from the Gonzaga game, potentially like if there's one takeaway that's going to span the season, it would be this. It's going to be that the Aztecs, probably for the duration of the season, are likely going to struggle against teams that are just not even so much bigger, but teams that are strong, like teams that are strong teams, right? Teams that have guys like Jaden Ledee was last season. Those are going to be tough matchups for the Aztecs, and especially down low in the paint, right? When Graham Ike got mostly whatever he wanted. And to his credit, Magoon Guath had a block or 2 against Ike, which was really cool. Miles Heide had a couple possessions where he was able to stand up Ike and do pretty well, but by and large, Ike did whatever he wanted for the most part. And a lot of that, Ike's really good. Don't get me wrong. And I a couple years ago got a reputation of not liking Ike, and that wasn't the case. I won't get into that now, but Ike's really good. So some of that's going to happen just because he's really good, but also he was able to just muscle around guys like Guath. And Guath, you can't teach 7 feet, and you can't teach the length that he has. And so Guath is still going to be able to do things here and there, but when he gets matched up against these big, strong guys like a Graham Ike, like a Ryan Kalkbrenner, as we segue into the future here, it's not going to be a good matchup for Guath. And I don't think Guath is going to start on Kalkbrenner, but with how much the Aztecs switch, it's going to happen at some point. So hopefully Jared Coleman-Jones can pick up some of that slack. Hopefully Miles Heide gets into some sort of rhythm. He has been, I don't know what a great descriptor is for it. He hasn't been great to start the season. he's looked like he's regressed. And to his credit, his plus minus score is, I think, second best on the team, which is only through 2 or 3 games, depending on which games you look at. But I think if you just include the 2 Division I games, I think Miles Heide is the second best plus minus, and that's incredibly small sample size. So can't look too much into that, but there's something going on there. In theory, something is going on that's right. But he just largely looks like he's regressed, and I think, without getting too much into it, that could be a whole pod in and of itself, but I think just limiting what you ask him to do is the key there, at least until he can build some confidence. But as far as that season-long takeaway, teams with big, strong, big men specifically, I think are going to cause the Aztecs problems. To a lesser extent with the wings and guards, although even then, to a certain extent, right, B.J. Davis isn't exactly a strong guard. He's a quick guard. Miles Byrd isn't exactly a strong guard or wing. He's a quick guard slash wing. So these players are everywhere. Jared Coleman-Jones isn't exactly known for being strong. He's definitely experienced. He's definitely a grown man, but he's not known for being strong. He's very much a finesse player, right? Heide is still young. DeMarshe Johnson is there, and DeMarshe Johnson is a grown man in terms of like his age and his development and whatever, but he's also not the biggest, strongest guy. He's very athletic, but he's not the biggest, strongest guy. So I think while the Aztecs can still play physical, just the difference in pure strength. This is like the anti-2023 team that went to the national championship, right? That team had a bunch of dudes that were big and strong, right? Lamont Butler is a strong guard. Matt Bradley is a strong guard. Agueka Rope, a strong forward. Nathan Mensah, strong center, right? Like, these are all strong dudes, and this year's team seems much more quickness and finesse based. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's going to be something to look forward to as the season progresses. With that all out of the way, let's move on to looking at the games that are coming up during Feast Week here. So first up is Creighton. That's on Tuesday, and it's midday. I think it's 1 o'clock Pacific time. Don't quote me on that. The time change has been messing me up lately, and I'm in Mountain Time, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 o'clock my time. No, sorry. That's way wrong. It is 12 o'clock, so it's 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. I'm pretty sure that's right. Creighton is not looking like the best of matchups. They are currently ranked 16th in Torvik. I don't have KenPom right now, so I'm using Torvik, but they're relatively similar. They're pretty similar. Creighton's ranked 16th in Torvik. They haven't really played anybody as of today. Their toughest matchup was UT Rio Grande Valley, which is 171st. They've played all games that are probably going to end up quad 4 and all at home. They do play Nebraska later tonight as I'm recording this, so that'll be a challenge for them. That is still at home, but that'll be a challenge for them. And so that'll be a good one to watch to see what's going on there. This matchup doesn't look good, though. First off, they are a big team. Their guards are small, 6'1" and 6'2", but then they have a 6'6" wing, and then 6'10" forward and 7'1" center in Ryan Kalkbrenner. And Kalkbrenner is the key. He has been absolutely fantastic so far to start the year. He is shooting 91% inside the paint and 90% from the free throw line. He's averaging 26 points and 9 rebounds a game. He's been absolutely on fire, and he's been absolutely unstoppable. And add to that, he's one of these players that not only is he skilled, but he's one of these players that is just a big and strong dude. So how the Aztecs match up with him and figure out what to do with him will be interesting. I would probably, if it was me, send some double teams his way. I do think Guath, because he's Guath, will be able to get a block or two at some point, because he just surprises people with his length and his jumping ability. But overall, I would expect Kalkbrenner to win that matchup over the course of 40 minutes very easily. He's just He's too big. He's too strong. He has hit a couple of threes this year as well. He is 3 for 4 from behind the three-point arc, 75%. That's obviously an incredibly small sample size, but that's a little scary as well. But ultimately, if he's out there, I'm probably letting him shoot it. That's probably a better option than letting him get the ball down in the paint. So there's that. He's going to be obviously the number one thing. He's going to be the guy that you're building the defense around. You're building your game plan. That's what I'm looking for. You're building your game plan around trying to stop Ryan Kalkbrenner. They also have Steven Ashworth, who Aztec fans are familiar with. We last saw him in the 2023 Mountain West Conference Championship game. He had a down year by his standards in Creighton last season, but he is very much picking up again. He is averaging 16 points and 7 assists early in the year. Now, sure, we can say those are against 4 bad teams, but regardless, those are impressive numbers. He's shooting 45% from behind the arc. His assist rate is off the charts, which makes sense given 7 assists a game. He's been fantastic to start the year as well. And so this team, there are certain parallels between them and like a Gonzaga in the sense that they have a very dominant big man and a very good point guard. And so that could be troublesome. Just in a more general point of view, this team is elite inside the paint and really inside the 2-point arc. When you look at their numbers, they have the second best shooting percentage inside the 3-point arc, and they have the 5th best defensive shooting percentage inside the 3-point arc. So basically, they funnel everything into Kalkbrenner and let Kalkbrenner disrupt shots, essentially. I mean, other guys do it too. Obviously, you can never do that with just one guy, but inside the paint, this team is crazy, which will be problematic for the Aztecs because they haven't shown the ability to shoot the ball consistently yet, and that was a concern even heading into the season. And, you know, the game against UCSD gave a little bit of hope. The game against Gonzaga, not so much. So we'll have to see what the Aztecs can do there and how they can try and figure out ways to score on this elite Creighton defense. There is the potential that players like Jared Coleman-Jones, like Magoon Guath, can hopefully pull Ryan Kalkbrenner out of the painted area with their 3-point shooting. I wouldn't expect Creighton to start there, though. At the very least, like, those players are going to have to show it, especially because JCJ, I think, went 1 of 5 behind the arc against Gonzaga. And so I would expect Creighton to be like, you're going to have to make a couple before we start really honoring that. So these are all things to consider. The other thing that Creighton does to this point in the season, literally better than anybody, is they do not commit fouls on defense. They are number 1 in their defensive free throw rate. So they don't foul people, basically. So you're not going to get a lot of bailouts there either. Like, they funnel you into the paint and they force you to try and score over them, and they do it without fouling you. And that's why their defense is so good. And then their offense has Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's been unstoppable down low. They can spread the floor with Steven Ashworth. Their other shooters have all been bad to start the season. They have one other player besides Ashworth and Kalkbrenner technically, but I don't think I trust his numbers that much. They have one other player who's shooting 33% and nobody else above 30% on the entire team for this year. Now, once again, though, that's only 4 games, and some of these other players have shown that they can shoot the ball in previous seasons. And so is there a return to the mean type game coming up for some of these Creighton shooters? Hopefully not against the Aztecs. The Aztecs have traditionally, for the past, basically in Brian Dutcher's tenure, had pretty good 3-point defense every year. So hopefully that continues. That's going to be basically the only shot, because even if, let's say somehow the Aztecs find a way to really slow down Ryan Kalkbrenner and make him work for shots, if they're doing that by like sending a double team, which is probably what I would do, but then other guys are left open and those guys start hitting those shots, it's not going to matter, right? And so while obviously anything can happen, upsets happen in college basketball all the time, the Creighton game is one that I wouldn't expect the Aztecs to win. I'm going to be as I sit down to watch that one, I'm going to be approaching it kind of the same as I approached the Gonzaga game, in the sense of come out, show some improvement, show some better, offensive flow, show the same commitment to the defense, and just don't get blown out, basically. Like, show some fight. Don't get blown out, keep it respectable, and then build from it, right, is kind of going to be my approach. That absolutely should not be the approach of the coaches or the players, nor will it be, honestly. But that's how I'm going to be approaching that one, if only to save myself from the disappointment there. After that, because of the way this MTE works in Vegas, the Aztecs also know their second opponent, and their second opponent is Oregon. Oregon might be gettable. If you were going to choose, if you were going to bet that the Aztecs are only going to beat one of these teams, Oregon would be the one to beat. First off, they are ranked currently 40th in Torvik. When I wrote my notes for this earlier, they were 39th, so something happened and they dropped down to 40th, but that's okay. So they're ranked currently 40th in Torvik. So that's worse than Creighton, obviously. They are a very balanced team. They're 42nd offensively, 52nd defensively. So they're kind of good at everything. And when you look at their numbers, they don't really have any weaknesses. They have things that obviously aren't as good as other things, but they don't really have any weaknesses. So that'll make this game interesting. They have been challenged more than Creighton. That's not saying all that much, though. They've played 5 games as I'm recording this, and the only one of any note is Oregon State. And really, even that is only of note, mostly just because they played it in Oregon State's arena. So it was a road game. So they have gone on the road by the time that they play the Aztecs. They will also be coming off a game against Texas A&M the day before. So by the time they get to the Aztecs, they will have played a couple of tougher games. They have some guys. So once again, following this train of thought of like, is this team going to be big and strong enough to take advantage of the Aztecs' youth and more finesse play style? Their big man, and who is also, once again, their primary offensive option, very similar to EK, very similar to Kalkbrenner. Their big man, his name is Nathan Biddle. He's averaging 16 points and 10 rebounds a game. And so he's another guy who's very good. He's not as big as some of these other players, though. He's listed at 7 feet. I should have looked up Oregon's roster. I looked it up on College Basketball Reference, and it said he was like 215 pounds. And that's probably not accurate, come to think of it. But he's not the same skill level and size as some of these other players. I guess he's bigger than Graham Ike, but he's not going to be bigger than Ryan Kalkbrenner. So he's the number one guy. So hopefully slightly better matchup there. You still give it to Oregon, obviously, but hopefully a slightly better matchup there for the JCJs, for the Magoonguas. Oh yeah, no, this is updated. So I pulled it up. He is listed at 240, 7 feet 240. So he's another big guy. Just without the same level of skill as a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner, but another big guy. So that'll, once again, how do you slow that down? How do you account for that? Their starting power forward for the last few games has been Brandon Angel. Aztec fans should be somewhat familiar with him. He used to play for Stanford when the Aztecs played them a year or two ago. I don't remember which one it was. But so he's been their starting power forward. He'll be a name to keep an eye on. He's playing very well to start the season. Not the most prolific scorer in terms of volume, but very good in terms of efficiency. So that'll be another guy. Their overall starting lineup is 6 foot, 6'5", 6'5", 6'8", 7 foot. So a little bit bigger on the wings, a little bit smaller in the front court than Creighton. So that's another thing that could potentially help the Aztecs, right? Overall, it's not looking great for either game. But like I said, if you were going to choose one, Oregon might be the one. Maybe Texas A&M is able to beat them up a little bit. I mean, probably not as much as Creighton can beat up San Diego State, though, potentially. Like, there's so many different factors that go into this. I think the big thing is just that Oregon doesn't have the same level of skill. They don't have the same level of size, and they aren't like elite at anything. Like I said, they've been good at most everything, or an average at the things they aren't good at, but they aren't elite at anything. So hopefully what that does is it helps the Aztecs to take away the first and second options type thing defensively and keep Oregon scoring less points going into that one. The last game in this Players Era Festival is TBD, because it's the one that responds the way that like an actual tournament would. So the first two on Tuesday and Wednesday are pre-scheduled, and then there's no games Thursday or Friday, and then on Saturday is the final game, and that's the one that how you do in the first two games affects who you end up playing in the last game. And this is the one that, like, it's hard to say who you would want the Aztecs to play, but I think whoever they play will end up pretty much being who we would want them to play. And here's what I mean by that. If the Aztecs go in and they lose against both Creighton and Oregon, then they're going to be playing the last place team on the other side. That's probably going to be, let me say who the teams on the other side are first, actually. It's going to be one of Houston, Alabama, Rutgers, or Notre Dame. So if the Aztecs lose both their first games, the metrics and stuff would suggest that they would then play Notre Dame. Notre Dame is currently 64th in Torvik. And at that point, you would want them to play Notre Dame because that's the team you're going to be most likely to beat. Notre Dame might not be the biggest resume builder if their net ranking is similar to their Torvik ranking. On a neutral floor, that would be a quad 2 game. It's not bad, obviously, but it's not a huge resume builder. But at that point, you would kind of just want to win a game. Like, you lost your first two. Let's leave Vegas with one win at least. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, if somehow the Aztecs are able to come out and beat both Creighton and Oregon, that's fantastic, right? That is two very quality wins coming out of Vegas. And at that point, you're probably going to be facing Houston, would be the guess. Could also easily be Alabama as well, but let's just follow the metrics and say it's Houston. Houston, you're not very likely to win against. That is okay, though, because you have those two other games to really build up your resume. There is the thing with the Players Era Festival where, as I understand it, the teams NIL program specifically get $1 million each for participating. And then if you win the tournament, you get an extra $1 million for your NIL. So there would be the case where you would still want to win for that extra $1 million. That being said, from just a purely resume building standpoint, if at that point you're playing Houston the final day, it's probably because you've already gotten one, if not two, and likely two wins in the first two games, right? At the very least, you've gotten one. Like, if the Aztecs beat Creighton, or maybe lose to Creighton, but beat Oregon, and they somehow end up as like the 2 seed in their group, and then, Houston lost to Alabama or something, and they end up as the 2 seed in their group, then you're playing Houston, but at least you beat Oregon, right? Like on a neutral floor, that would hopefully end up being, that would be probably right on the border between quad 1 and quad 2 as the season goes on. Maybe they raise up a little bit and cement themselves as a quad 1, but at least you've gotten a quad 1 win out of this at that point, right? And so if you go up and play Houston and you lose, you still have something to build your resume. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that. I normally, when I look at these things, it's kind of like, who can the Aztecs beat that's going to help their resume the most? And in this case, it's still so early. The Aztecs have played only 3 games and only 2 against D1 competition. Like, it's still just hard to say who the team is, but it does seem like who they play will correlate to who I would want them to play in that scenario. So that's really encouraging, I think, at least from that point of view. And hopefully the Aztecs, I mean, when Reese Waters went down, let me back up actually. When at the start of the season, my hope, this was obviously a very good field, right? I still thought the Aztecs should be able to win one of these games and hopefully would win two. Obviously the ideal is 3, but how realistic that was always very iffy. So like hopefully they can win 2. And then Reese Waters goes down. And all of a sudden that changes. And it was really, if I can back up even further, like if you can go 2-2 between Gonzaga and then these 3 games, that's fantastic. Reese Waters goes down and now it's like, well, shoot. If you can go 1-3 between Gonzaga and these 3 games, that's fantastic, right? And it is not at all out of the question to me that the Aztecs could potentially lose all 3 of these games and end up 0-4 in those 4 games, right? I said Notre Dame is 64th in Torvik. San Diego State is 80th. So like according to the metrics right now, San Diego State is the worst team in this bracket. And that's not even a slight on San Diego State necessarily. Like, I mean, obviously they're young and all these different things, but it's not a slight on San Diego State. That's a testament to how good all these other teams are, is truly what that is, right? And so, especially missing somebody who I said earlier, probably your best scorer, arguably your best player overall, missing that player in this tournament, it's not out of the question that the Aztecs lose all 3. So hopefully they can find a way to pull out one, whether it's against Creighton, whether it's against Oregon, whether it's against a Notre Dame or a Rutgers or whoever. Hopefully they can get one. Would that be enough to truly build like a resume and really kind of cement your standing in the tournament deal? Man, words are hard. No, it absolutely would not. You would have some work to do. Of course, you would need to go undefeated for the rest of your conference schedule, which hopefully wouldn't be too hard. There wouldn't be many games after that. And then you would need to do well in conference play, which is worth less, comparatively speaking, than the non-conference play. But hopefully that one would be enough that with a strong conference showing, you can say, you know, whatever you need to say, like we did enough, and then we backed it up with a very good show in conference, and the conference is looking pretty solid again, not going to lie. Boise State had a big win against Clemson the other day. New Mexico has beaten UCLA already. Utah State still hasn't quite played anybody, but they're looking really good. They're scoring insanely, and nobody's really been able to figure out their zone defense yet, their matchup zone defense. So there's a lot, plus Nevada, who granted did just lose to Vanderbilt yesterday by 2 points, but they've also looked very good. So like the conference is looking pretty solid. So if you can have a good showing in conference play, you can do something, which is super encouraging. But hopefully they can, hopefully they can take at least one of these games. That's at this point without Reese Waters. Hopefully Bird is back healthy. That would be huge. But without Waters, if the Aztecs can win one between Creighton, Oregon, and whoever they play in the third team, if they can win one, I think that's a win. And hopefully it's not too pessimistic for y'all. I'm just trying to speak my mind as truthfully as I can. And if they are able to win 2 or 3, I will obviously be ecstatic. And if they don't win any, it won't be the end of the world. But, hopefully they can win one. That does it for this one, Aztec fans. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to be able to record again. I'm going down to San Diego for Thanksgiving, which is very exciting for me. Unfortunately, the Aztecs will be in Vegas, so I'm missing them. But I will be down there. It might be harder for me to record when I'm down there. So we'll just see how it goes. It might have to be next week when I'm able to record again. But I'm hoping to get into a better routine and do this and be able to do this more often, especially with this nice studio. Once again, remind you to let me know how it sounds. If you have any feedback on whatever. Always open to hearing that. And yeah, be sure to follow on Blue Sky. And I missed at the beginning, so follow the crew as well. As far as I know, they're all still on Twitter, and I know they're all on Blue Sky. So you got Jacob at Aztec Analytics, you got Kyle at Call Me Kinslow, you got Austin at It's Austin Bolton, you got Carly at Car McGee. Give them all follows wherever on social media you happen to be. And while we're at it, do what you can with the We Believe network as well that Austin and Kyle started. Yeah, I think that does it, Aztec fans. We will catch you next time.
On the floor, it's Butler with 2 seconds. He's got to put it up, and he wins it with the jumper.
Mitchell's feeling it. Now he's feeling it even more. What it do, Matt Mitchell? Shackle to Flynn for the win. It's good! Malachi Flynn! Over the rim.
2 to go. Butler has to put it up for the win. Butler sticks it at the buzzer. And a steal. Darion Trammell will coast in for the layup.
Franklin with 2 seconds forces the shot. It's good. The Aztecs advance. They've won it on the shot by the player of the year.
Miller, he put it behind his back. It's taken away by Butler. Lob it up. Lob it down. Big finish. Keyshawn Johnson.
Now we have tasted it. We're coming back. We're coming back.